This paper indicates that I am doing something I have not done in almost a decade. It's going to change a part of my Nomad Capitalist lifestyle, and I wanted to share it with you. My name is Andrew Henderson. This is another edition of Nomad Capitalist, where I sip tea and you hear me talk about the personal side of the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle, beyond reducing your taxes, beyond second citizenship. It is what it's actually like to be a global citizen, having multiple passports, having diversified assets, living normal day-to-day life around the world. And so if you're looking for the latest tax tip, this is not it. I'm going to talk to you today about a personal experience that I had and how I'm changing part of my lifestyle, one that some of you have commented on over the years. So without further ado, here's the paperwork, and we'll cover up anything here that is personal. But this is an offer to purchase form, and you can kind of see on the top here. This comes from Mercedes-Benz. I am here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, buying a car, something that I have not done in almost a decade, about a decade now, since I left the United States, since I sold my car to a guy for cash, and haven't looked back since. Now, if it's your first time here, I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best with lower taxes and all the stuff we mentioned all over the world. We also host an offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live, which is open to everybody. And so I'm here talking to you as a globally minded entrepreneur and investor who has been living a full-time nomadic lifestyle. I own properties all around the world. I split my time between those properties. It happens to be a rather tax-friendly way to live, but personally I enjoy the lifestyle of living in different places. It helps me with new business ideas, helps me with new investment ideas. It just helps me live my best life. I love meeting different people, have friends. I made a list of people that I want to come to my birthday party this year, and they're in like 9 different cities. So it is a very global life that I lead. And as a result, what I've done over the years is I built up this collection of properties, which are more like, as one friend of mine called them, pied-à-terres. Basically, properties in the city center where I fly in, and some of them, I'll go for a week at a time, 2 weeks at a time, even a couple days at a time. And so in Istanbul, for example, I've got a property that is near kind of the prime shopping street. And so I don't need to take a car. I literally get a car service in from the airport, get a car service back to the airport. Unless I'm doing something really special, I'm never in a car the entire time that I'm there. I don't spend a lot of time in Istanbul, but just as an example, I'm never in a car. And people have seen me walking around the streets of Bogota, Colombia, Kuala Lumpur. I mean, I see people all the time, and people often are like, why is this guy walking? Well, number one, I enjoy walking. I enjoy getting the exercise. And quite frankly, I just live in locations where I never saw the benefit. I live in my own kind of what I think is the best neighborhood. I go to the restaurants, and if I need to get somewhere, I just call a car service, or I just get an Uber or whatever the case may be. And so what I decided was just the idea of, number one, I think when you're a business owner, you want to constantly challenge yourself to do new things, to go to the next level. And so for me, I looked at having a car as something that for the longest time, it's like, okay, it's inefficient. Let's say I'm in Kuala Lumpur for 3 or 4 months a year. Like, what happens the other 8 months of the year? And as we've built our business and as I've built my lifestyle, it's like, okay, we can have personal assistants, we can have teams of people to help with that. Like, we can find processes and systems. Now that I found processes and systems for like everything else with my finances and business and all that, now I can find processes for that. So what I decided was, listen, I will spend $500,000 or $600,000. That's what I would spend on a car, where one car is like a full unit of car between all the different places that I wanted to live. And so this particular car, I guess, is going to be, $175,000 or so. It's an S. For those of you who are wondering, by the way, it's an S580E. It's the only S-Cat available in Malaysia because Malaysia, as with many Asian countries, has very high import duties. So they have what's called a CKD car, where basically it's finished, or in this case, I think largely assembled in Malaysia. So therefore, you have kind of the Mercedes vibe, but it's finished to where you avoid basically all the taxes. There's some tax where they're not sure if the government's going to bring back the SST, which is like a 6% sales tax, which is only 6% on part of the value of the car, basically the parts, not the labor, but you're not paying the huge import duties that you would pay, for example, on a Bentley, on an Aston Martin. And I went to those dealerships, and they have some insane scheme where you're shipping your car back between Langkawi, the duty-free island, every 90 days, and it's just weird, and it's like, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, well then pay 2 million ringgit or $500,000 in tax. And I'm like, I think I'll just go with the Mercedes. Thank you. It's kind of the best Mercedes they have, and it's finished in Malaysia, and it's kind of the special Malaysian edition, which now I need to learn to drive on the other side of the street. So I'm going to be taking driving lessons. But basically I said, oh, listen, I will spend $500,000 or $600,000 to buy a car. So I have properties in Belgrade and Montenegro. We have an office in Belgrade, and hey, if I wanted to get a car there, that would count towards it. So, let's say you buy an S-Class or something, it's probably a little bit cheaper there. That would count against the 500 or 600 grand. And so you could kind of basically figure out everywhere you live where you want to have cars. I have a home in Bogota, which I don't really spend that much time in other than last year. You probably wouldn't want to drive a very fancy car. That's one thing that people tell you. If you're successful, you don't drive an expensive car. So I wouldn't bother having a car there. But potentially you could have a car in Tbilisi, you could have a car in Belgrade. If I moved somewhere else, in Europe, could get a car there. But my idea was $500,000 or $600,000, basically put that in. So I don't know, how long would you keep a car? 5 years at least? Certainly any good car these days will last that long. So hey, I figured $100,000 a year, kind of amortized, get a couple different cars. I'm nowhere near that because I've spent in one city about $175,000, and actually haven't spent it yet. I put down a 5,000 ringgit deposit to be in the queue, where I'm now waiting for 6 to 9 months for them to make a car in one of my color choices, which is silver. There were 4 exterior choices and 2 or 3 interior choices depending on your exterior color. So you don't have a wide array of options because the cars are made in Malaysia, and you're saving a boatload of tax versus, let's say, a Bentley, which takes about a year to make. They tell me you can customize everything, but you're really going to be waiting, and you're going to be paying a boatload of tax if you don't want to be doing a constant shuffle. So my idea was, as far as leveling up, and as far as the occasional time when in Malaysia you get stuck in the rain and you don't want to walk home, and the car services are just not really available. I did finally decide to pull the trigger when I was out somewhere, and it was like a 90-minute wait to get a car. It's that typical app, ride-sharing app thing where it's like 7 minutes, and it turned out to be like 90 minutes because it was raining, because there was so much traffic, and it was a holiday. I'm like, you know what, enough. I'm gonna stop, because I'm not a car guy. I never really enjoyed cars. I don't get the excitement of driving a car. Ever since I was 14 years old, I wanted a sedan. I wanted a car with a good sound system and just a cool feel. I didn't want to get a BMW, for example, because it's more when I've test driven BMWs, it's like a driver's car. I'm not a sports car guy. I don't want to enjoy the driving process. I just want a comfortable way to get around, have a certain amount of style. I don't enjoy the power, even though I guess it's a pretty powerful car. And so I said to myself, all right, fine, I'm going to do it. I just never saw the purpose of spending the money. I thought it was more a pain, and owning a car, you've got to figure out road tax, you've got to figure out insurance. With Mercedes, they basically sell you the insurance package, they pay the road tax for you. So it's kind of a nice all-in-one package where everything is done for you. So that kind of alleviated the frustration of I don't need more things to think about. I'm running a business, I'm living all over the place, I'm managing different properties. I don't want more things for me to think about, or everyone says, oh, we'll just give it to an assistant. Right, I don't want more. I still try and reduce what an assistant does, because I don't want them to have too many things to think about, because in my lifestyle, it's very difficult to find one person who knows what's going on in every country that I go to, because it's a very international life. But the bottom line is, why I wanted to share this with you is not only to kind of walk you through the process of what happened to me in Malaysia, but to show you that you can be settled and be a nomad. Again, as someone who doesn't like cars and just thought, okay, it's a waste of money, it's going to cause complexity, I haven't done it for so many years because I just enjoy walking 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, not a big deal. Ultimately, it's okay, let me level up the life. Let me kind of, all right, acknowledge and I'm seeing people, and I'm trying to go here and I'm trying to go there. Sometimes you just want to have a car. That's unfortunately the deal. Malaysia is a country that kind of where I'm from, the United States, people look at you why don't you have a car? This is a place where you need to have a car. It's well, not if you live in the neighborhood where everything's going on. You don't need a car. But certainly if you want to now go and talk to those people and hang out with those people, they're okay, well, we'll meet over here at the golf club or something. So, you've got to drive. But you can be settled. And you can have a life, and you can have a house. Here in Malaysia, you can own a house. You can have a car. You can handle everything with a car. You're probably going to pay a little bit more to do that in many places. There's parts of Eastern Europe where you can get really, really affordable cars. In Asia, you are going to pay a premium. I think this car in the US, starting out, is $115,000. This model is basically they only sell a fully loaded model, or pretty close to fully loaded model. So maybe if you were to fully kitted out in the United States, it'd be 145 grand, and here it's give or take 175 grand. So you are going to pay a little bit more. Again, the selection here in Asia is less precisely because of the taxes, and they found a way to get around those taxes. But as a result, you don't get to choose from 20 different colors, because basically what they're doing is they're saying, all right, we're just going to make the cars in the quantity that we want. I think there's like 10 different permutations. There's silver in 2 interiors, there's black in 3 interiors, there's it's 10 different combinations. We're just going to make them because there's no other choices. And hey, when your selection comes up, what did I choose? High tech silver / black. When one comes up and you're next on the list, we'll just let you know. And so when that comes, then you'll pay the rest of the money. We'll throw in the insurance. We'll cover you for the first year, and we'll pay your road tax, and kind of all is handled. Again, for me, if you happen to go to Ireland, the UK, parts of Asia, those are probably the tax-friendly parts of the world where you'd have to learn to drive on the other side if you're not from one of those countries already. You're going to have to drive on the right-hand side. So that's going to be a process that I'm going to be going through in the near future. But the good news is this whole thing was cheaper than I thought. I mean, because everything I'd heard was like 300% tax on cars. I never really investigated in all my years. I just didn't care. I just basically heard import taxes are crazy. And if you buy a domestically produced car, and then over the years I heard like, okay, BMW makes one car. I'm like, I don't really like that car. And eventually, basically, I realized that any of these kind of more common brands, like a BMW, a Mercedes, Honda, I mean, they make cars in Malaysia to basically get around this problem. So I guess, buying a car right now is pretty expensive anywhere in the world. People are paying, used cars are appreciating where I'm from in the US. So I think the same was true here, where I was like, if I don't want to wait 9 months, can I find a used car? No, the process, honestly, I wanted to pull my hair out, even trying to find like a 1 or 2 year old used car. And so it's just easier to go to the dealership. I will say the first dealership I went to, it was kind of unclear as to like, if Mercedes decides to raise the price later, you have to pay extra. Like, so you haven't locked in the price, you're just locking in the order for the car, and then they'll set the final price, which seems a little bit weird. So I left the first dealership, I went to the second dealership where they were a lot more straightforward about it, and I said, all right, fine. One of the questions people have asked me, by the way, is like, if you're doing this because you want to, you just want to like do this for business, are you going to have a driver? And I learned that more than 50% of people in Malaysia actually drive an S-Class. They drive in the back seat because they have a driver. My thought process on that was, if you're going to live in one country, go ahead and get the driver. Again, the process of maintaining the car, from everything I've checked, and we had our finance team check, seems pretty straightforward. Obviously, I don't want to run afoul of any local regulations or not be insured or any of that stuff whatsoever. But from my perspective, if you're living in one country, build your entire life there. I will drive the car, I think, because the idea right now of figuring out a driver logistically, first of all, I don't know how that works. Like, I want to go somewhere at 8 in the morning, and then I want to go somewhere at 2 in the morning. What, does this guy like live in my garage? I mean, like, where does this guy go? It's like kind of like the live-in maid. Nothing wrong with hiring a maid. Could afford to hire a live-in maid. Could afford to hire a maid who lives somewhere else. But it's like, I don't want someone hanging around my house, and I don't want like someone who's working for me like 21 hours a day. Just seems weird, even if some of these people, I guess that's what they do. They just like live in your car waiting for you to call them and wake them up. I don't know how it works, I guess. Just not something that I've been into. But for someone like myself, who again might spend 4 or 5 months, number one, what do you do for this guy? We will figure out a process for the car to sit there. It is a hybrid car, so you can plug it in. I'm gonna go and retrofit part of the area in my garage downstairs to accommodate that, so I don't have to fuel it up as much. But what do I do with the driver when I'm not here, right? Like, I can get oil changes, like I can like have it moved around, I can have it started, I can have someone come over and do any of that stuff, but just have a guy, a driver to not drive me seems a little silly. On top of that, the human error of like hiring a driver that you're not gonna be full time, it's like the stories that you hear throughout Asia, people who hire maids, and then they want to do something really nice for the maid, and the maid is like, oh, that's too nice, so like now I'm gonna take this huge tip that you gave me, and I'm just gonna go quit, because I'm going to live off your tip for the rest of my life is the thought process. And like, I don't want to necessarily work with someone where it's like, hey man, just for 8 months, like sit around. And I don't know that you'd really be able to legally have a driver like follow you around the world and like drive your car in different places when if you don't have a car. So logistically speaking, it seemed like a challenge. If I were living in Malaysia like every day of the year, I would just get a car and get a driver. But Otherwise, I think I will just drive the car. So that is my journey. It is the next step of the nomad capitalist evolution. It doesn't have to take you 10 years living overseas. If you just want to go and buy a car directly, I have people who are moving to Dubai right now. They're looking for cars. I have people who move their cars. You can do that, although again, certain countries are going to tax the heck out of you. But overall, pretty good process buying a car in Malaysia. It wasn't that difficult once I kind of adjusted to the local way of doing things, and looking forward to doing this for the first time in almost a decade.